Okay, so today we are diving deep into a true literary sensation, Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles. We're going to explore exactly how this incredible retelling of an ancient Greek epic became such a modern cultural phenomenon. And that's the big question, right? This isn't just some new release. We're talking about a retelling of Homer's Iliad that came out over a decade ago. So, how on earth did it suddenly blow up and find this massive new audience on TikTok, of all places? Let's unpack how this ancient myth became a modern must-read. And when I say massive audience, I mean it. The numbers are just staggering. By 2022, the book had sold over 2 million copies. But here's the wild part. This wasn't some slow, steady climb. Nope. Most of that success came from a sudden, viral explosion online, long after it first hit the shelves. So yeah, that explosion didn't start in a bookstore or a literary review. It all began on social media. It was there that the novel was basically rediscovered and just launched into the stratosphere by a whole new generation of readers who were hungry for its mix of epic tragedy and really intimate romance. The engine behind this whole resurgence? It's a community on TikTok called Book Talk, and its power is absolutely immense. I mean, the New York Times even pointed to the Song of Achilles as the prime example of how this community can completely change a book's destiny, turning kind of forgotten titles into runaway bestsellers almost overnight. So, what is it about this story that just captured so many hearts and took over everyone's social media feeds? Well, to really get that, we need to look at what's at the very core of the novel. The absolute genius of this book is the shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on the huge battles and angry gods, Miller just zooms all the way in on the human element. By telling the story of the Trojan War through the eyes of Patroclus, she turns this epic of war into a deeply personal story about relationship. And at the heart of that story are these two figures who couldn't be more different. You've got Patroclus, an exiled prince who's awkward and not really sure of his place in the world. And then there's Achilles, the son of a goddess, a golden child who is literally destined for greatness. The entire novel is built on this powerful, magnetic bond that forms between them. The novel really charts their entire journey together. It starts with this unlikely friendship between two boys, which then blossoms into this deep, profound love. But that bond is ultimately tested and really defined by the huge pressures of fate and the brutal reality of the Trojan War. But, beyond just the plot, this relationship becomes a way to explore these timeless, universal themes. And this is where the story gets its real emotional punch. The novel really digs into what it means to love someone when destiny is breathing down your neck. It uses their relationship to question those traditional ideas of heroism, and it's constantly asking you to weigh a life of peace and love against a legacy of fame and glory. The central conflict really becomes, do we control our own fate, or is it already written in the stars for us? And look, a huge part of why this book hits so hard is just how it's written. Miller's background as a classic scholar totally shines through. Her writing is just poetic. It's lyrical. This isn't some dry retelling. She brings these legendary characters to life with such incredible emotional depth that you feel their joy and, of course, their absolute heartbreak. The book's path to becoming this global phenomenon is really a two-act story. First, it had this burst of critical acclaim, then a long quiet period, and then, boom, an explosive viral comeback. So, check this out. It was published in 2011 and almost immediately won the super prestigious Orange Prize for Fiction in 2012, which is a huge deal. But then, near silence for almost a decade. Then, all of a sudden, in 2021, it just explodes on TikTok, pushing sales past 2 million by the very next year. What a remarkable journey, right?
Of course, anytime something gets this popular, it's gonna spark some critical discussion. The book isn't universally seen as a perfect masterpiece, and it's definitely worth understanding the critiques.
So, for instance, one critic, E.F. Sunland, called it a lukewarm rehashing of the original. The argument there is that, while it's definitely emotional, the novel maybe leans on some familiar story beats and doesn't quite have the same creative spark as Miller's later book, Circe. And this really gets to the heart of the whole debate. On one side, the book gets tons of praise for its emotional depth, its beautiful prose, and how it humanizes these larger-than-life legends. But on the other side, it's critiqued for using some familiar tropes and maybe not offering a ton of new insight for people who are already experts in Greek mythology. But in the end, the book's power doesn't really come from the epic battles or the gods.
It's all about finding this relatable, intensely human love story right in the middle of an ancient myth. It takes something legendary and makes it feel deeply, deeply personal.
Honestly, the success of the Song of Achilles is just proof of the incredible power of retelling old stories for a new generation. And it leaves us with this really compelling question. What other myths, what other legends or histories are just sitting there waiting for the right voice to come along and make them resonate all over again?